character. Building the character that a Christian should have, right? The system of beliefs, values, attitudes that we're to incorporate, integrate into our thinking, and into our person that enables us really to live the kinds of lives that God wants us to live. And in this series, we're studying a lengthy list of traits that are revealed in the Bible that I'm proposing to you are to be characteristic of our character. In fact, 52 of them. We're not going to get through all of those in this quarter. But the one that we're talking about two this morning as we get through them both. But the first one is the idea of sincerity, that we are to be sincere people. Sometimes you may hear in modern discussions the idea of authenticity, that somebody is authentic. Have you heard this before? Sometimes it's in discussion of politicians and such. But what do people mean when they talk about somebody as being authentic, or somebody being, usually it's somebody being inauthentic, of not being authentic?
You actually are what you seem to be.
Okay, you are what you seem to be, or the opposite of that, that you're putting on some kind of show that's not really consistent with who you are as a person. It's not really consistent with your character. You're in a sense pretending to be somebody else. Yeah, you know.
The Greek word for hypocrite is an actor, somebody pretending to be somebody who's not.
Right. Yeah, we're going to talk about that idea of hypocrisy being one way that the scriptures talk about insincerity. So if there, as in most cases that we're going to study here, there are multiple Greek words that get translated sincere within the scriptures, and I've just listed two of them here. The first one being without hypocrisy, this point that Neil just made. And maybe let's just kind of define that here. What is it? What is hypocrisy? Neil got to it a little bit. What is hypocrisy? Or to be a hypocrite. There's a lot said about it. Jesus over and over and over again, accused people of being hypocrites.
It refers to being an actor.
Right.
Putting on, play like you're something that you're not.
Right. So when we occasionally sin, and one way of describing a sin is for us as Christians would be that we're not acting consistent with our values when we sin. Does that make every act of sin an act of hypocrisy on our part?
I think that there's a little bit of intention behind it. So if you're saying that you're one thing but doing something different, that's when it becomes hypocrisy.
And there's also described as a daily walk that we're supposed to have, a consistent walk. And so it's one thing to stray off the path and then get back on the path. But it's another thing to not walk that way consistently, not walk on the path at all.
Okay. Other thoughts? Yeah, David?
It's an interesting question because hypocrisy is a specific sin in and of itself that's condemned.
Mm-hmm.
And so you can have the sin of hypocrisy, you can have sins that flow from hypocrisy. You can also have sins that flow from other sources and motives as well.
Right. Right. Other thoughts?
I think you can sin without hypocrisy by being straightforward about your struggles. You wouldn't be a hypocrite if you're telling everyone I'm really struggling with this particular sin.
Yeah.
And then you know, obviously you still have a problem to fix, but hypocrisy is not one of them.
Right. You know, there is a, yeah, David. you
Well,
said-
we have the classic example of Paul before his conversion. He wasn't a hypocrite.
Right.
He was steeped in sin, trying to destroy the cause of Christ. He did it with a clear conscience.
Yeah, that's right. So I tried to describe it this way, you know, it's systematically acting contrary to your stated values or beliefs. That is, this is your process, right? That you intentionally, and there's some kind of forethought here on your part. You're putting on a show that's contrary to really what your values and beliefs are. So I don't think I'm breaking any news here by saying that Christians, everybody here from time to time sins. That doesn't make you a hypocrite unless somehow you're kind of systematically putting on, you know, a face, a mask, a show, right? And so sincerity, that isn't being sincere. That's not being genuine, as the scriptures describe it. So that's this idea without hypocrisy, that we're being sincere, genuine, not pretended or fake. So that's the idea that's communicated here. And we've all encountered people, I mean, and it generally sets us up, it gives us some unease, right? You've encountered people who are fake, right? It's like, ugh, you know, you don't enjoy the interaction with those people, right? It's sometimes quite obvious. Sometimes in this part of the world, it comes across as like sweetness that's not really felt, right? You've all encountered that, right? The smile that doesn't seem to be true. Okay, now we have to be careful about this and, you know, about judging people when we don't have sufficient evidence, but you've all encountered that, and hopefully we're not doing that with others, being fake. Okay. So this is the idea of sincerity, and it comes up a lot in the scriptures, and the first one, this word, this first definition in First Peter chapter 1 and verse 22, he says, since you have in obedience to truth purified your souls for a sincere love of the brethren. That is, fervently love one another from the heart. You know, you can see the idea of sincerity there, right? That is, genuinely, you should be loving your brethren, fervently love one another from the heart. Not fake, not pretending, but genuine. Okay, 2 Corinthians 8 and 8, just another word that's used and translated with this same idea. I am not speaking this as a command, but as proving through the earnestness of others the sincerity of your love also. Okay? So it just happens to be both those passages are connected this idea with sincerity, with love, but there are other ways in which we express our genuineness to others. So, I think this is not a difficult thing, right? I think we understand what this is, unless there are any questions about what it means to be genuine. So the question is, how do we cultivate sincerity? I don't think I'm also breaking any news here that probably from time to time we haven't always been sincere. Okay, so this is not like a super easy thing to be genuine. So how do we cultivate this trait within our character so that it's part of us, Gary?
Being sincere too can become in a negative response. If the person talking to you, they say, well, you do so and so, I say, well, I respect your opinion, but I don't think I would like to do that. So you're being sincere, so it doesn't always have to be a yes answer.
Well, yeah. Well, there's some judgment here, you know, that you express every thought in your head
Yeah.
with others, you know, maybe the judicious thing to do is to, not cause a scene, That doesn't mean you're acting contrary to your interests by just trying to be disciplined and not everything is an outburst. Okay, that's not putting on airs in this way.
I do think that in this case, like, I think of vulnerability, which is not as
Yeah.
easy for everybody, but learning, particularly with our brethren, to be vulnerable. Sometimes we have that conversation, we see each other about, how are you doing? Well, I'm good. How are you doing? I'm good.
Yeah.
I know we've had conversations about this before with each other, but getting to a place where you're comfortable enough to say, actually, I'm struggling with something. I'd love to talk about it. Or I am doing good, and here are some things.
Yeah, that's right. So let's just bring up this point. It's farther down my list here, but look at the point second to the last. Learn who and how to trust so you can put aside the mask. What do I mean by that?
I mean, we all know people who are truly sincere in everything we do, and we may be one of those. But there's a lot of times where we're not, right? Just like everything in our walk as a Christian, even as Paul wrote, you older women teach the younger women how to love your husbands. Older men teach younger men, right? So as we're looking to learn and to know what it looks like to look at with sincerity or somebody with sincerity, if we're having a problem with that, hopefully we can find somebody who can help teach us.
Yeah.
And hopefully there's members in the church that whether it's the local congregation or other faithful members who will take the time to teach you.
Yeah.
And I do think there's also a twist to this where Paul says in 1 Corinthians 9, I became all things to all people. So there is such a thing of being what is needed in the moment, which in its own way is sincere, but it may not be it's not hypocrisy. It is being what is needed in the moment with the people that you're around, so that you can be that good influence.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. This idea of, learning who and how to trust so you can put aside the mask is, we all do have a mask. Yeah, we know ourselves, or that's the process of life, knowing yourself. But is there anybody that you know who knows you completely? Probably not.
Paul
Right.
says no one knows the things of man save the spirit of man that's in him. Only we ourselves and God know ourselves totally.
But there are people who we let in more than others, right? That we show more of ourselves to than others. That we open up, more to. I mean, and that's just what it means to be a person. And I think it is natural to a degree. But this is what I'm getting at here, is how do we learn about, trusting and opening ourselves up to others. And that's a part of sincerity. And if you look at Psalm 139, that's who can we really trust? We can really trust God here. We should hopefully are being sincere in regards to our relationship with God. And one of the reasons we should be is that he knows us totally, whether we express it to him verbally in prayer, for example, or not. And that's something we see in the scriptures, like in Psalm 139. Oh Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You understand my thought from afar. You scrutinize my path and my lying down, and are intimately acquainted with all my ways. So he knows us. Now, not everybody knows us like God knows us. That's the point that I'm making here.
And Todd, there's also a knowledge within our local congregation that would not be known outside of these walls, because we're able to let walls down in ourselves here, because there's a basis of understanding in this room that isn't out in the other room, out in the rest of the world. And so in that, we actually, the people in this room should know more about us than anyone else in the world, because we're able to be more ourselves and more sincere in this group, and not have to protect ourselves like we do with the rest of the world.
Yeah, to a degree. Yeah, and I want to wanted to make the point here that, and I'm using this passage from Luke 18 where Jesus tells a story about a Pharisee and a publican who went, right, to the temple to pray. And what was the main distinction between these two, right? The Pharisee looked around and said, God, I thank you that I'm not like these other people, these swindlers and everything. And then the publican, the tax collector, lifts up his eyes to heaven, the text says, but was beating his breast saying, God, be merciful to me, the sinner. What was the distinction between those two people in the story?
The real distinction, the Pharisee stood and prayed with himself. The publican prayed to God. Okay?
Yeah, what's the attitude? One attitude that's different between these two was the sense of humility between the two people, right? The Pharisee was elevating himself in his prayer, whereas the publican knew what he was, right? Acknowledged what he was and acknowledged before God. David?
Well, it speaks to the point that if we're going to be sincere with others, we got to be sincere with ourselves first.
Right.
Be honest with yourself. And the Pharisee was not honest with himself,
No.
and that's at the root of this.
Yeah. So the point I was trying to make here is that, putting down the mask and being sincere and being open does require humility on our part. And I don't want to get into that topic because it's a big topic, but like confessing sin to one another. Wow, that's really taking the mask off. Yeah. And exposing yourself, your inner self to other people in ways. Anyway, okay. So maybe enough on that. Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Well, you mentioned humility. I think it also takes some of the opposite to remove your mask. You need some confidence in yourself, like knowing that you are the person that you want to be gives you the confidence to reveal yourself to others and show, this, I'm proud of who I am. So it's okay for me to open up and show that versus being ashamed and wanting to hide that.
Yeah.
Which obviously involves making some changes if you're looking at yourself and seeing things that you don't approve of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a good point. Brian.
Many years ago, I was in the car business a long time. A lot of people, there are a lot of good people, but there are the stereotypical people as well. And I worked for a general manager. He went out and talked to a customer, came back. He was very proud of himself. He closed the deal and he came back and said, if you can fake sincerity, you can rule the world. And I said, why don't you just try to be sincere? He's like, you don't know anything about the car business. I've been doing it 15 years at that point, so I did. But it was just one of those things that it just stuck with me forever, that I remember exactly where I was sitting, exactly how he said it.
Yeah.
If you fake sincerity, you can rule the world.
Yeah. Back on the first point that I was making here, that to cultivate this idea of sincerity, the reality of sincerity in our character, one way to do that, we need to appreciate the importance of truth. And there are many passages on this point. In John 8, what does Jesus say? You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. There's a typo in there. It should be 1 Timothy 2 and 4. But there's a famous, I think famous, it's very impactful kind of thing that Pilate said when he was interacting with Jesus in John chapter 18. He says, therefore Pilate said to him, so you are a king? And Jesus answered, you say correctly that I am king. For this I have been born, and for this I have come into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice. And Pilate said to him, what is truth? What was what point was Pilate making here, trying to make?
I mean, Pilate at this point in time, trying to satisfy the Jews and what they do, trying to say, what is truth is setting out. Truth is to you what truth is to you.
Yeah.
Whatever you say your truth is, that's what your truth is.
Right. That's the kind of question that you could very well anticipate hearing if you were eavesdropping in some coffee shop someplace. You know? What is truth? Or what you've heard this expression from time to time, you know, speak your truth. What's that mean? Your truth versus my truth. That, right, from a long time ago, it's not that it's a modern invention to kind of create kind of relative sense of what truth is, that it depends on your perspective on what the truth is. Yeah.
And this is why the law was needed, because how can there be a basis for punishment and reward if we don't know what the real truth is, what the real basis is? And that's why that is needed, because the world, everybody has a different truth.
Yeah. So I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that part of cultivating and being a sincere person is being able to distinguish truth from what is not true. And I guess I might have answered the question. I thought about this some, you know, how would I have answered maybe Pilate's question here? Jesus didn't directly answer it. I would say truth is what God sees. What is true is the reality that God sees, as opposed to what others might see. And when we can see something through his eyes, that's true. Some people have loose affiliations with the truth. You've heard variations on that theme, you know, in terms of, but there's a bit more to it, you know, than that, because I think we all need to be able to distinguish, well, what is the reality here? What is true here? Well, one step toward that is say, well, how would God view this? Or me? We need to learn also from the wisdom that is above. Somebody read James 3:17 for me, if you would.
But the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy.
Okay. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, reasonable, full of mercy and good fruits, unwavering, without hypocrisy. Right? So it cultivates. Wisdom will create within us, God's wisdom will create within us this sincerity that we're seeking.
And James 1:5 tells you how to get that wisdom.
Pardon?
James 1 verse 5 tells you how to get that wisdom.
Right. If anyone lack wisdom, let him ask God, who gives. We also need to recognize the value of the genuine over the fake. There are a lot of warnings, as I mentioned previously, about hypocrisy. Why do you think there are so many warnings about it? I guess you can express an opinion. I mean, Jesus used that word a bunch, right, in the scriptures. And some of the harshest statements, if you want to call them harsh, that Jesus made, and he made with that word, right? You hypocrites. Why so strong a position, you know?
Well, they thought it was needed.
Yeah, I mean, he thought it was, yeah.
But the first thing is, it's gonna keep us from pleasing God and being acceptable to him. And then, like you're talking about in Matthew 23, when he warned about the hypocrisy of the scribes and Pharisees, he talks about how they would make a proselyte, they convert somebody and make him twice as much a son of hell as themselves.
Yeah.
It's a corrupting
Yeah.
influence. You're teaching others to be this way too.
Yeah, that's right. So I'll key in on the word, because that's what, it's corrupting. It's corrosive. this particular way of behaving. And I think, this is an opinion, but that's why there's such strong language here. Hypocrisy is corrupting, it's corrosive to the spirit of a person, and will prevent you from, unless you address it, will prevent you from growing and becoming the person that God wants you to be, because you're pretending. You're pretending. And I think, okay, it's an opinion, but I think this is why Jesus in such strong language condemns hypocrisy, because it's corrosive to the spirit, not just to the individual themselves, but as David pointed out, to people around and such, that pretending is somehow an acceptable substitute for being genuine and sincere. Unless it is addressed, or the underlying factors that affect it, unless it is addressed, that person cannot make progress toward being what God wants them to be.
I think as you look at it too, in a matter of hypocrisy, you being, say, a hypocrite in yourself, eventually, even when you said, talk about your truth, eventually your lies, you say enough, become truth to you. But then when you go and you look at verses like Matthew 7:21-23, where Jesus says, not everyone who says to me shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father is in heaven. There'll be those that they say, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name? Did we not cast out demons in your name? Did we not do many great works in your name? And Jesus says, depart from me, for I never knew you. So you can take it to a point, as we're talking here, knowing that it's in that day of judgment not going to be what God is looking for, but you've led yourself to believe in what you're saying. And that's what a lot of the Pharisees had. They had been doing it for so long, they believed in what they were saying.
Yeah. So I think we've covered most of what I intended to cover here, but I dwelt a lot upon the negative side of this, of being insincere. But I think sincerity is so important, working to be genuine in our faith, and in our conviction, and our relationship with God and with other people. And this is something I believe all of us can work on, and being genuine, being authentic, being sincere in what we're doing. And I think it's a substantive topic and call how we can do this. Any further points about this?
Sincerity requires depth of character. So, and a lot of people will stay kind of in a shallowness, because when you let people in, you risk being hurt. But look at all that you earn when you are that sincere and compassionate person with, more depth to your person.
Yeah.
I think it's a key cog in teaching others, because people can recognize when it's really important to you to share the truth. And when you don't have that level of sincerity, then you're just one of many other teachers out there that are saying something different.
Yeah. I don't know what it is about the human mind, but we're very sensitive to insincerity. We just are. And that's why it is so important to try to cultivate this. Be you, as opposed to pretending to be somebody else. Now, if there are deficiencies there, you need to work on those deficiencies. I'm not saying that, I just need to be me, so you're just, run around all day long, outbursts and being angry with people because that's the way you feel. But that's not the point. The point is, work on that. But we need to be careful about pretending, because it is corrosive.
And when you pretend, you draw people to the person you're pretending to be,
Yeah.
not the real person.
Yeah.
So when you are the true, sincere person, like attracts like.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Good final point too. I was gonna say that as I've been thinking through the idea of sincerity, sincerity is seen in the context of relationship. So there's a story that comes to mind when I think of sincerity. There are really 2 points in the scriptures. One is when Jesus says, where is it? It's in Luke, where he says that special person in the context of relationship. To, like, when you perceive their sincerity, it draws you in.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that is, we've been talking about maybe on the positive side, the character of God. The character of God is truth, love, all good fruit, all good things. And so he draws us in. And the story that came to mind was the story in Mark, where Jesus encounters the Gerasene demoniac. There's a little detail in that story that I love, which is, and perhaps in parallel stories too, where the people come to find the demoniac, and he's sitting before Jesus, clothed in his right mind. This person who is so steeped in sin, whose character is adapted, or tarnished because of this influence of sin and darkness. And then in the presence of God, he's restored. He's how he's supposed to be.
Mhm.
And that, I think, is the product of sincerity. It's relational. It happens between persons. It certainly happens when we encounter the person of God.
Yeah. Yeah, and just keying on one of your point, it's a very attractive quality, right? It just is. And people are drawn to other people who are sincere and genuine. And cultivating good relationships with other people can be facilitated by cultivating this and then having an influence on others. Okay, so in the 10 minutes that remains, we'll cover the next topic, the next character trait here, which was being honorable. And even that word, I had a note to myself, this is an old-fashioned idea, of being honorable, being an honorable person. This particular Greek word can be, and sometimes is translated, good, beautiful, noble, excellent, honorable, admirable. These are the ideas that are connected with this particular quality that we're to develop within our character.
Respectable.
Yeah, respectable. Such conduct as deserves esteem. Yeah. So, and I'm going to read another definition and one reference here. Attractively good. Good that inspires others to embrace what is lovely and praiseworthy. That was kind of a powerful idea for me. Attractively good. This is the idea of conduct and that deserves esteem, right? That it promotes respect from others. Okay. So, big question here: how do we become honorable in this sense? How do we cultivate this as a part of ourselves, our inner person? It is the foundation for a lot, I would say, and I've used Luke 8 and 15 to illustrate this point, that it's a foundation of a lot. In Luke 8, Jesus is explaining the parable of the sower, and in verse 15 he describes the seed that fell in good soil and the outcome there. He said, the seed in the good soil, these are the ones who have heard the word in an honest and good heart and hold it fast and bear fruit with perseverance. So the word in the New American Standard, I don't know, other translations may use a different word there. In an honest heart is this word kalos. And the good translated there is the other word that we had looked at previously, good, agathos. So you got kalos and agathos, good and good. But it's the idea that you're right toward God Okay, this is the first one, you know, honest, you're right toward God, and you're good toward others. This is the idea that I get from this idea, honest and good heart, that you're not cheating anyone. You're not cheating God, you're not cheating other people. I'll let you think about that. So. But he's doing more than repeating himself by using these two closely associated words, because we mentioned when we talked about this quality of good last time in agathos, it was like good that benefits, right? Good that benefits others. Whereas this idea of honorable, it's good in an ethical sense. Okay. Gary?
I like to garden, and I would garden year after year after year, and I always thought about the fact that if I grew vegetables and I give it to somebody, I want it to be good.
Yeah.
I don't want one side to be rotten and the other side not. So I cultivated that soil to make it so it'd be good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that here, all these terms we're using is how's our heart? What is you're gonna put your heart into it?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you just gonna each year just throw down some seed and just see what it does? And
Yeah.
I think that has a lot to do to cultivate your heart. It's hard to do.
Yeah.
Stick to it and I think there's a lot to be proud of it.
Yeah.
That may be where you honor somebody as being honorable. I'm proud of what I do, but it doesn't have to be in a boastful way.
Yeah.
But I just love to do that, to see people want to come over. I want to see your garden. Okay, some people I gave vegetables to had never actually seen a garden, so
Yeah.
it's like wow. But anyhow, I didn't mean to change the
No,
subject.
no, no,
but
no.
it's-
You're not changing the subject at all. I think it's a good point there that tending your heart. I mean, having a productive garden is a big investment in the soil in that
Oh,
garden,
yeah.
right? Huge investment there. And if we want our heart to be productive, this is the point Jesus made. Well, that's going to require a lot of investment in our heart. And what I'm talking about as character here is what we see. You know, how do you describe your heart? What is inside you? You know, that system of beliefs and values that you hold. So part of doing this too, being honorable, is we need to elevate in our thinking what is revered and dignified. And this familiar passage to us in Philippians chapter 4, when Paul encourages the brethren, finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, that's the word here. It's a different word, but it means something very similar. Whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is good repute, if there is any excellence, if there's anything praiseworthy, dwell on these things, he says. So my point is, we need to elevate what is revered and what is dignified. We're surrounded by a lot of undignified behavior. Okay? And I've made this comment in the past. You could watch like the news 24 hours a day and it's just filled with undignified behavior. Undignified behavior and attitudes by people in high positions in business and entertainment and politics, and that is not our model. And just because some high-born person is behaving and conducting themselves in that way, right? That doesn't make it right? That doesn't give it respect. So we need to focus on what is revered and dignified if we want to be honorable, not finding patterns in those who are not behaving that way.
And Todd, one of the things that I've been seeing more and more, and of course the mindset is always there because the Bible mentions it, but it's getting even. And, those that are considered good now, if they've been wronged, then it seems to be the mindset that it's good to get back. It's good to do something, and we see the opposite example for someone who is honorable, which is choosing to do what's right when no one's looking because it's the right thing to do, and turning the other cheek, which is also an honorable thing to do, and being able to forgive and then move on.
Yeah. Right. So we, yeah, there are a lot of bad models out there, and we should be focusing on the good models with respect to what is actually honorable. And somebody's income level or how much power they have does not qualify that person to be a good model about what is honorable for us. Okay? And the point I was trying to bring up in the next one, consider and conserve your reputation with regard to your honor. If we want to be known as or have a reputation for being honorable, then we have to behave that way. We have to show that. The wise man said, "Do not let kindness and truth leave you. Bind them around your neck. Write them on the tablet of your heart. So you will find favor and good repute in the sight of God and man." So we need to bind these traits to us. He says here, kindness and truth. If we want to have a reputation that is honorable, and it's easy to lose a good reputation, hard to build one, easy to lose one. And we all have a charge here, one of our last points, to influence others to honor God. So as we model what it is to be honorable, right? We are working to, I think, draw people to honor God. If you're following me, yeah. God who is honorable. In Romans chapter 12, do not be wise in your own estimation. Never pay back evil for evil to anyone. Okay? So much as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. Well, it says respect what is right in the sight of all men. Okay? This is what it means to be honorable. The word that's translated right there is this same idea. What is right? What is honorable. It's the same word. Okay, we're over time. Leave you with we'll just read quickly in Galatians chapter 6 and verse 9. This point is made again. So then, while we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, and especially to those who are of the household of faith. That is, let us do good. That's that word. Let us do things that are honorable, okay? That can be respected, that are attractively good. That's how we're going to conduct ourselves toward other people. Okay, thanks for the time, and thanks for the extra minute.